Well, good morning, everybody. I am going to be doing my beef stew in jars, in quart jars today. We had freezing rain here, so my client canceled on me this morning because she's like a half hour away and she said the roads were bad. So I'm canning today. Anyways, so I have the canner on, maybe about a 5. I'm just warming up the water. And I just washed all my jars and now I have them sitting in hot tap water. And the lids are in hot tap water. And what I do is I flip them over, one right side up, one the other way, so that when you go to lift them, they're not stuck together. So I've got some non-iodized gray sea salt. I have some onions, chunks, celery, carrots, potatoes, and all my beef is cut up. And I'll be putting in a little bit of minced garlic in each jar. And right now I also am going to heat up some beef broth to put into the jars. And I have my vinegar in this little bowl here for wiping my rims, my funnel, my jar lifter, my debubbler, and my magnetic lifter, and my rings. So we're going to get going here, and I'll bring you back as the process is on the go. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to do this one-handed. Get some beef in the jar. And we're going to do some potatoes. I like more potatoes than carrots. Some people like more carrots than potatoes. Get some onion in there. And some celery. Maybe a few more potatoes for me. As long as it's all underneath that first ring here. I think we're going to try and keep it at maybe 1 1/4 inch headspace. Give that a try. Well, I can fit a few more potatoes. And then we're going to do a teaspoon of salt. You don't have to, but I like to have my stuff seasoned while it's cooking. And now we're going to add just a smidgen of minced garlic, just enough to give it some flavor. This is a really, really small spoon. So that's probably about 1/4 teaspoon of minced garlic. And then, after that is done, we are going to add the beef broth and then put on the rings, or the lids and the rings, and then we'll put them in the canner. Goodness. Okay, our broth is heated up nice and hot. So I'm just going to turn that right down on low, keep it hot. And the reason I want to do 1 1/4 inch headspace is because that beef that's in the jars, it will also release its own juices and some fat. So I want to have a little bit of room there in the jar so that it doesn't siphon out. And just to make sure that my vegetables are also underneath this ring and underneath the liquid so that it doesn't siphon out. So now we're going to go around and debubble, get all those bubbles out, because when this is under pressure, you don't want those bubbles causing more pressure in the jar. You know, you don't want to crack your jar, and you don't want to lose any of the liquid if possible. So we're just going to move stuff around and get all those bubbles out. And sometimes you'll need to add more liquid or some more vegetables or whatever in there, but I think that looks pretty good. Looks like everything's pretty much underneath, and it's leaving another 1/4 of an inch under this ring here. This is my judgment for 1 inch headspace, so I think that looks pretty good. And you don't have to use beef broth. You can also use just plain water if you want. It's up to you. Whoop, wait a minute now. I'll be right back. I got to get a paper towel so I can wipe the rim. Okay, we can't forget to wipe the rim. You want to make sure there's no salt on there or any juices or anything on there at all, so that you're going to get a good seal. Okay, so I usually dip it in vinegar if there's any grease at all involved. And yeah, I just want to make sure that everything is cleaned off of there. So now we're going to put on the ring and just do it fingertip tight. Sorry, I'm doing this one-handed. So I just go until you can feel that, you know, it's going to stop. And then after that, it can go into the canner. So I'm going to come back once everything's in the canner, and then we'll go from there. Well, I'm done packing all my jars. I just got to get these filled up with broth yet and wipe the rims and put the stuff on and get them in the canner. And I still have quite a bit of chunked up beef. And I also have 1 package of stewing meat. So I think what I'm going to do is just can that all up in broth in quarts. And I had, this was 1 2-pound bag of carrots. And I figured it was going to be too much, but I think what I did is 1 large potato per jar, 1 carrot per jar, and then I just chopped up 2 ribs of celery and divided that up in between all the 7 jars altogether. And I'm not sure how much beef, but maybe I can figure that out one day and let you know. And I've used so far, I just filled up 3 jars. And I used 2 quarts, so I think probably 2 quarts of beef broth. And this pan was full, so I think probably, I might need to use the 3rd one. So far I've used 2, so I'm going to dip into that 3rd one yet. And that's for 7 quarts. Alright, so 7 quarts takes approximately 2.5 of these broth containers. And now I've got everything ready to go in here, so I'm going to turn the stove up to high and get the lid on, and then we get these babies rolling. So what I do is take 3 of these quart jars and fill them up with water and put them in the canner. And then I usually put in about, maybe a 1/4 cup of white vinegar, because I have hard water here, so my jars get really filmy and cloudy from the hard water, so that vinegar helps to keep that stain off of your jars. So we're going to bring this up to pressure. And once you start seeing a steady stream of steam coming out of that stack, and this little stack is up, then we're going to set the timer for 10 minutes. And after that, that's when this jiggler weight goes on. But I'll bring you back and show you that stuff. Well, I've got some cleaning up to do while that's coming up to pressure. So I'm going to get my dishes all done and cleaned up, because I'll be doing another batch after, so I want everything in order. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Carolyn, that's Carolyn and Josh at Homesteading Family. She is a mother of 9 or 10 children, and yeah, they prepare all their own foods and herbs and whatever, and I've learned a lot from her. on a lot of canning stuff. And I also want to give a big shout out. This recipe or canning session is from Carolyn's page. But I also want to give a big shout out to Mrs. Bev Wolfe from Our Half Acre Homestead. She is amazing as well, very knowledgeable, and that is usually my go-to channel for anything canning wise. So yeah, check them both out. Alright, so it's starting to spout a pretty good stream of steam, and this little stack will come up in my 10 minutes. Usually it comes up about 4 or 5 minutes in, I guess, something like that. So anyways, I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes. And then once that 10 minutes is up, a lot of this steam and air will be pushed out, and then we can put this jiggler weight on. So for my elevation, I'm about 2,400 feet above sea level. So I have to use 15 pounds of pressure, a 15-pound weight. So you need to go online and check what yours is, and yeah, take it from there. We'll be back after 10 minutes. Alright, our 10 minutes is just about up. So I'm going to be putting on my 15-pound weight. And once that starts to jiggle, then we're going to start the timer for 90 minutes because we're processing meat and we're doing it in quart jars. There. That's on, so it'll take about 7-10 minutes and it'll start jiggling. Okay, the weight's just starting to jiggle, so I'm going to set the timer for 90 minutes, which is an hour and a half. And then our beef stew will be done. And I usually leave it in the canner for at least 10 minutes before I take it out. And I'm also going to be turning this down now to about a 7, and then in a few minutes I'll turn it down again to about a 5.5. Okay, we're back. So we only got about 22 seconds left. We're going to shut the timer off. The hour and a half or 90 minutes is done processing. We're going to shut off the stove. And we're going to let this cool down. And when this little stack is dropped, then we can take off that jiggler weight. And it's 12:50 now, and it usually takes roughly around 45-50 minutes for this to fall down. Then we can take that off. And then about 10 minutes after that, I'll take the canning lid off and show you the jars. Well, this little thing should be dropping here any time, and that means that I can take off the weight, and then we can go to the next step. Okay, that stack dropped like 1 second ago, so that was 50 minutes for it to cool down, enough so that that little stack could drop. So now we can take off our weight. And I'm just going to very carefully with one hand just unlock the canner, and I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes before I take the lid off and take my jars out. So we'll be back. Okay guys, the beef stew is ready. Oh, wow. It looks pretty amazing. The stewing beef on the bottom and the carrots and potatoes. Yeah, she's looking good. Yay! Happy canning!